am a criminologist, a correctional officer, and a PhD candidate, and a researcher in correctional center-based violence or prison violence. So this video is basically just an explanation as to why I chose my topic. So the topic for my PhD is a predictive weather model for prison violence, exploring incident mapping and predictive analytics. For the research is to look at how can we predict violence from happening. So to give a bit of background, I come from a family where my grandmother was a nurse, my other grandmother was a social worker, my father was a policeman, my one grandfather was a station master on the railways, and my other grandfather worked at Mgeni Water Affairs. So all of these elders worked in community-based organizations and worked in communities that were less fortunate and worked with those who were less fortunate. This was my drive into corrections and into a world where I can look at violence in a different way and look at it at a preventative way, because none of us deserve to be hurt, regardless of what we have done, regardless of our history. None of us deserve to be hurt. The research focuses on looking at assaults and violence in all its variations. So most of us, when we think about violence, we think about a physical incident, when violence can be a lot more. Violence can be something emotional, something psychological, but it can also be something structural, like the building itself or the systems or the rules or the laws, both formal and informal. But it can also be cultural. It can be the way that we communicate or how we speak, but it can be what has been transferred from one generation to another, what is written inside of a space. For instance, what has been written as behavior inside of prison. So once we understand how violence works inside of a space, how the system functions and how it flows, we can learn how to prevent it. This is important to me because growing up in a family where everybody wants to make the world a little bit better, a little bit safer, I have this dream of a safer South Africa, and a safer South Africa for even offenders, even those in prison. Because if we believe in safe custody, if we believe in a safer South Africa, why would we exclude someone? Just because someone is in prison, he should be subjected to violence. This is not my belief. My belief is that no one should be subjected to violence, and everybody has the right to dignity, everybody has the right to bodily integrity and free from harm. So the idea of the research is to build a weather model in which a prison can then predict their temperature or gauge how their center works. And with that, they can build a risk mitigation. So they can go on and build ways of searching actions, security actions. So the idea of having a weather model or having a weather system is that if we know it's going to rain, we take an umbrella. So if we know something bad is going to happen, we try to prevent it. So this is the idea. So how we're going to do it is kind of quite fancy and technical. We're going to use a lot of maths in it. But we first start by understanding the system. Violence always works in a system, whether it's a family system, a community at large, or a semi-closed environment. Violence always works within a community or within a system. So if we understand that system and how it works and how violence can kind of push back from one cell to another, from one individual to another, or one correctional center to another, we can actually determine how that violence moves. But this goes a little bit further. But if we understand how violence originates, so for instance, understanding that it's a broken glass that creates a shard of glass. A shard of glass is then a sharp object. A sharp object creates a means for weapons. And a weapon does not necessarily cause a stabbing, but it gives the means and the opportunity for an assault to become a stabbing. It creates the opportunity for violence to escalate, for physical violence to be more than it would have been. So if that can be determined, we can prevent it. Then we're also looking at how violence moves. Is violence just static? Are we just fighting one individual to another? Is it organic? Does it move as we get frustrated from one individual to another, from one cell to another, one unit? Or is it mechanical? Is it someone actually motivating people to fight? This is questions that I have in my research study, and this is what motivates me, is the idea that I believe in a safer South Africa. And taking this forward, if we can understand how violence moves in a semi-enclosed environment, we can actually move forward to understanding how it works in communities by looking at all the various factors. What is happening in the incident? What led up to the incident? So there's a lot more to violence and understanding what happens inside of prison than just offenders. It's also understanding what's happening in our communities and how these two are actually pushing and pushing back. It's not a push and pull kind of metaphor. When we talk about violence, it's really a push and push back. That violence always escalates. If I have a knife, you bring a gun. If you have a gun, I bring a bigger gun. And then the violence always escalates and always becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that is my basic gist of my research. And again, my motivation for this is to look for a safer way, not just for offenders, but also those working with offenders. Because we always exclude those inside of this environment. Because officials have to subject themselves to this prison environment. And they have no means to actually predict what's going to happen. Every day is just something fresh, something new. And if that's the day you're going to get stabbed, oh well. So the idea is to look at ways that we can prevent harm on all forms, on all platforms, in every which way we can, so that correctional centers become spaces of change, spaces of correction, not spaces of violence. So this is again my motivation, and I say thank you very much. So if you do believe in this, if you think I have some cool ideas, please support my crowdfunding. Thank you very much.